I'm starting this podcast off with a question. Are you willing to give God his inheritance from your marriage? We often hear people saying how marriage is a ministry unto the Lord, but I want to break down some of what that is going to look like after the beautiful wedding, after the amazing honeymoon, because the reality of the divorce rate is proof that not everyone is ready for this kind of ministry. And what I'm going to share with you will hopefully help you to determine whether your marriage will be a godly one or a worldly one. You see, a worldly marriage carries the mindset of, what can I get? And now this isn't wrong in essence. I mean, everyone receives something from the marriage. Both parties are receiving something from each other. But for this to be the mindset of what can I get, it's immature. And trust me, marriage is not for the immature minded. And it is not for the weak at heart. And so this is a worldly way of thinking when it comes to marriage. Whereas a godly mindset for marriage, where a person who understands really what is meant by marriage is a ministry unto the Lord, they are going to have the mindset that says, God put me in this union to give, to serve. It's a maturity where you understand that ultimately you are there to give unto this person as unto the Lord. That this is ministry. And see, the problem with a lot of people is that they didn't master this in whatever ministry they were working, whatever form of ministry they had during their singleness. They didn't learn this in their other ministry ventures while single. And so they have a hard time bringing this type of mindset into their new ministry, into this new season of ministry with their person. These are the people who found it hard to serve God's people unless the conditions were right. As long as the leadership was treating them the right way, as long as they were feeling good and valued. And, you see, it's the selfish mentality. It's about them. And if they are not elevated or receiving the recognition or whatever it is that they believe they should be receiving by the time they think they should receive it, then they burn out. Or they quit, or they don't want to do it anymore. And this is the same mindset people take into their marriage ministry. And so the Lord is asking you today, are you in it for me? Or are you in it just for what you can get? Because if you're going after it for that reason, then you're not ready for kingdom marriage. This ministry of marriage is not about your inheritance in the marriage. It's about God's inheritance in your marriage. And a lot of people just are not ready to accept that. I love how in Paul's text in 1 Corinthians 7, he talks about how a single person is concerned with how they can please the Lord, and a married person, how they can please their spouse. And people usually use this text to encourage people in their waiting while they're single. But what if Paul was also saying it to tell people who desire the ministry of marriage how to prepare for it in their single season of ministry? That if you learn this heart posture in ministry while single, then you will have a fighting chance to stay above water in your ministry of marriage. Because in essence, you are doing the same thing if you're doing it right. When you're single, you minister in love to those people like you are doing it to the Lord and for the Lord. And when you're married, you minister in love to your person as if you are doing it to the Lord and for the Lord. And to take it even deeper, which this may be a lot for some of us, but ministry to your Lord, your God, while single, is preparation for ministry to your Lord, your man, while married. And yes, I did say your Lord, your man, because that is exactly what Sarah called her man, Abraham. She called him Lord. And so this says to me that God desires the continuation from one ministry season to the next to be so seamless that not even the word Lord changes. And so you are, in more ways than one, in ministry unto the Lord. You know, we talk about how that man is supposed to love you like Christ. But what we don't hear discussed often is how you are supposed to love that man like Christ. So the way Christ loves you, right, is how he is to press towards loving you. And the way you love and adore and obey Christ, because, you know, mind you, Jesus said that those who love me, they obey my commands. And that scripture I was just talking about in 1 Peter 3, where Sarah calls Abraham Lord, it says how she obeyed Abraham. See, y'all ain't ready. Y'all not ready. This is what I'm saying, because in order to receive this ministry of kingdom marriage and not worldly marriage, in order to give God his inheritance from your marriage, you have to have this type of mindset. Are you willing to be this way? Are you willing to do this, to give God his inheritance from your marriage? Because if you are, your mind is going to have to be renewed. I mean, you know, or are you gonna just be in it for how you feel and what they can do for you? Because when they are no longer able to meet your expectations, trust me, you are not going to want to maintain your servitude, and you will withhold. But when you're in it for God, when you're in it for the kingdom inheritance that God is desiring to bring into the earth through your godly partnership, even when things are not going the way you want them to go, you will still respond differently, because you are in this ministry of marriage, not for yourself, but for what the Lord can receive. You're in it as unto the Lord. And when you have that mindset, you will be able to respond with maturity. And I believe this is the process the Lord has had many of us in, this process of just really breaking us down to where we can get to this point where we're like, okay, God, you can have your inheritance out of my marriage. You can have it, Lord. This process of submitting your marriage unto the Lord and bringing your heart into agreement with the choice that God will receive his inheritance through your marriage, that his plan and his will is more important to you than even your desire to have it. And so you have almost been in this season of sacrificing on the inside, in the inside of your heart. You've been sacrificing your marriage. It's almost like your marriage is your Isaac. And I just hear the Lord saying, I see what you've been through, all that you've had to endure while waiting for your Isaac. Just like Abraham and Sarah, you've gone through the pain of getting older, the pain of, looking at others receive their promise, the pain of wondering, God, why have you forsaken me? The pain of the projections from other people who are looking at you wondering, why isn't God blessing you? Maybe you're doing something wrong. Why hasn't God done this for you when you serve him like this, or what have you? Just like Abraham and Sarah, they had to process the pain of even taking matters into their own hands. And maybe you've had to experience that too. And so if this is you and you have been in this process of humbling, the Lord wants you to know he sees you. And he sees that you are willing to sacrifice your Isaac. And this humbling that you have allowed the Lord to bring you through during your single season, it's the same humbling that he's brought your person through too. You have to know that the way you are planning to love your person as unto the Lord, your person is going to love you as unto the Lord. So I don't want you to think it's going to be this one-sided thing where you're going to be miserable. That's not the intention. You all are coming together equally yoked. You all are going to be on one accord. And the humbling that you both experienced in your single season is because of the elevation the Lord is going to bring forth in your season of ministry together, in this ministry of marriage, where the Lord is going to exalt you all because you have allowed yourselves to be humbled under the mighty hand of God. And so the Lord has heard your cry for a partner. It's essentially the cry of intimacy. It reminds me of the Song of Solomon, where she gets to this point and she says, tell me, you whom I love, where do you feed your flock? She went through all this stuff where she finally got to this place of really being humbled. You're essentially saying, I know I'm yours. I belong to you, God. And I know that you love me, and I know that you will provide for me. I know that the Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. So tell me, I've gotten to this point. You tell me, where do you provide? Where do you feed? Where do you bring provision for that which is desire? Where do you feed your flock? And then she goes on and she says, why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends? You see, a veiled woman by the flocks of his companions was a woman who was disgraced. She was kind of disqualified amongst the others. And so she's veiled because of her shame. It's the disgrace and the embarrassment. And we see so many in scripture experiencing this process of barrenness in their lives as it pertains to their promise from the Lord and what they're desiring and believing for. I'm reminded of Hannah, and I just even sense some of you all have been postured like Hannah before the Lord, where she said to God, I'll dedicate this to you if you give it to me. It's your inheritance. I'll give you your inheritance from it if you give it to me. And this is what you've been saying to God, that God, if you give me my dream, this desire, this dream for marriage, it's like Samuel, the son given to Hannah, that cry in your heart to not be like the veiled woman, to not have to sit amongst the others, and be the only one without a son, to have to sit and be the only one without. Why should you have to be the one at the table without the son? Why should you have to be a veiled woman amongst the flocks of his companions, among the others? Why should you have to be the one unmarried? But it was to get you to this place where you would allow the Lord to receive his inheritance in your marriage, where you could say from your heart that, Lord, if you give me this dream, I'll give it right back to you. And even now I hear that song. This is the theme song for you in this season, that you can have it all, Lord. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. And so I'm going to ask you again, are you willing to give God his inheritance in your marriage? You can have it all. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart.